Great. Okay, so the value that Loom Systems is bringing is to give you confidence in your digital systems. What we hear very commonly from customers is that today's environments have grown to be far too complex, and there are now far too many combinations of things that can go wrong to be able to serve them with traditional tools. And I'll say a little bit more about that with all of these trends that are happening. I won't go into to them in detail, but we've got microservices and containers that make it smaller and smaller pieces so that you can build things faster and with more agility. You've got different flavors of the cloud. You've got distributed computing and virtualization, and Coca-Cola itself is on a big digital transformation journey. All of these trends are fantastic, but they increase complexity and they put the burden on the IT operations to be able to manage all of that new complexity. So the world needs a tool that can help manage and navigate this new environment. And so far, what tools have focused on is the data and the information that can be taken from it. So we are not at a dearth of data. We know that there's plenty of data out there. The problem is that you have to dig through it, and you need to be able to separate the signal from the noise. So today's tools that have come out in the last decade or so have been focused on providing information that a user can extract from the data. So the log management tools, the application performance management tools, and others that are similar require the human being to tell the system what type of information they're looking for, whether it be a dashboard that they build or an alert or a query. All of this is dependent on a human being to know exactly what to look for and to ask the system to return it. And things haven't progressed past this point until just now. So Loom is the tool that is providing you, instead of just data or just information, true intelligence. And the way that we do this is we use your log files, and instead of logs being a reactive tool where somebody or something else tells you that you have a problem, so then you go back and look in the logs, we're using them to detect problems now, or even problems that could come in the future that are starting to emerge and that could signify a problem down the road. And the way that we do this is in 4 steps. So we first collect all of your logs, put them into one place. Then we apply artificial intelligence and machine learning that learns the language of all of those logs, even custom logs, ones that you might have written yesterday. We're looking at the patterns, and we're using something called lexical detection to understand and parse and structure all of that unstructured data. That's the first step. The second thing we do is to build a baseline of normal activity that's coming from those logs, so that we know from every single log, from every single source, what is the normal behavior that we would expect at the time. Then, when it deviates, when anything in the logs deviates from the expected behavior, we're able to proactively alert you of the problem. And when we proactively alert you, the third step that the product does is it correlates and it connects all of the moving pieces that led to that problem. Because it's so common, and we hear this with specific divisions at Coca-Cola, that if it looks like there's a problem, for example, in the application, that it might actually be rooted in the network or in the server or in the database. It could be in a number of different areas, and it's very hard to follow those correlations and those connections to see what the actual root cause is. Then as a fourth step, instead of stopping at notifying you of a problem, we actually take this further and we bring in a recommendation on how to solve it. So these are the 4 steps that Loom is doing to complete the circle of collecting all of your data, an end-to-end solution, full stack, finding problems for you, giving you a clear picture of everything that's happening, and then recommending an insight and a resolution to that problem. In all, what this does for our customers is it reduces the noise from their existing systems by 93%. It helps them to be 70% more proactive. So they're finding 70% more problems before their users and their customers do. And then lastly, they reduce their time to resolution of these issues by 45%. So almost half is the time that it takes to resolve an issue with Loom versus before it. And with that, I'll jump into a very quick product demo. I'm happy to show a much more detailed demo to anyone on a one-to-one basis, but I'll show you just a very quick example of how this works. So right now we're within the Loom console, and you would go to this console to see an inbox of events, and the events that you're seeing on the left are incidents that Loom has found. These are the proactive alerts that it's sending you of the behavior that's abnormal. In the middle here is where you see the full picture of correlated abnormal activities that comprise that one incident. And then on the right is an insight showing you exactly how Loom would recommend you solve it. And Loom is very intuitive. We have a product tour that is a self-guided way to learn the product and help you understand everything that it can do. I won't go through the entire tour. Instead, I'll go through an example incident to show the power of it. So the first one I'll show you is on one component. And in this case, this is a VMware ESXi host. And we're streaming all of the logs into Loom. And we're counting everything that's happening within those logs. So one of the methods that we find problems that other tools can't do, or other tools wouldn't think to do because they're driven by human beings, is we're looking at the words in the logs. So we count every word that's happening from every single source. And in this case, we're seeing that the word failed commonly happens, and you can see that in this green line, and it fluctuates throughout the day. And for example, at 9 a.m., you would normally see the word failed 245 times. And then at 5 p.m., it's a little bit higher. At 6 or 7 p.m., it's 455. This fluctuation shows the dynamic nature of our systems. You can't apply a static threshold in a dynamic system and expect to get anything but noise or miss problems that might happen during low parts of the day. And Loom's resolution for this is that we have a dynamic threshold that's automatically built for everything that's happening within your logs. So this notification was triggered because there was a spike that was significantly different than the baseline of normal activity. There's an abnormal behavior that's happening here. So Loom is pushing this to you. You would receive it via email or SMS or Slack or whatever other method that you use to notify the team of a problem. And then you would go here, you would click in and go to the Loom console to see, here's the incident, here are the alerts that are associated with it, and here even is a distribution of where it's coming from. So in this case, we see that error is coming from primarily these three hosts. And then lastly, what we see over on the right here is a recommended insight and recommendation. So instead of a human being that would typically take the message and Google it, and then dig through knowledge base articles and developer forums and other sources that might be available internally, if there are any, Loom is already compiling all of those sources into one collective database. This is called our TriKB, or our tribal knowledge base. And we're matching the insight and the recommendation to the problem that we're showing you at the time that we're servicing the problem. So in this case, this is a known bug. The way that it's resolved is this specific knowledge base article, and the support person didn't have to spend the 15 or 20 minutes digging through dead ends on the internet. They have the right knowledge base article already delivered to them.
So how does it match up? Sorry, how does it match up the solution with what it found? Is that from your guys, like from what you have, or is that the process? Okay.
It is. So we are matching it based on, there's 3 sources that we use for this: knowledge base articles and developer forums that are publicly available. You can enter this and compile your own knowledge base, which you do when you click done. It resolves the issue. It asks you, what was the problem? And you can say, this was the problem. And then how did you solve it? I did this. And then you even give feedback to Loom to get smarter and to help to always show you the most important incidents by rating it. How severe was it? Was it critical? Was it medium severity? And how much time was spent on it? This feedback all goes back to Loom to make it smarter about what it's detecting, and it's storing this within your own internal knowledge base so that it can match it the next time that the problem occurs. And then lastly,
provide that solution.
And then provide it and match it to the problem when it comes up. And in the final area that we can draw these resolutions is from a crowdsourced database that our customers opt into. So you have the choice as a customer of sharing these resolutions. They're always moderated so that there's never any personal information there, but you can share these resolutions, and as a customer, you can always draw on the rest of the community's resolutions via this crowdsourced database.
Very cool.
So I'll show one more example, and then we'll wrap up. So this was a single component. This is showing how Loom is finding an abnormal behavior on its own. What we hear quite often from Coca-Cola is that it's not just one piece of technology that's acting up at once. So in this case, this was from a customer that we have in the e-payment space. Their custom app had user transactions that couldn't be completed, and here's the spike. Here's the abnormal activity that you see there. What was actually happening, though, is that it wasn't an application problem. There were 2 other things that were happening. The HA proxy, which is the load balancer, had a spike in error messages. So you can see that normally you get a few error messages, and then at this point there's 292. So there's something going wrong within the load balancer. And also connected to this problem is the web server, the Apache Tomcat, has a connection pool that's full. So it's discarding the connection. Notice that this anomaly has a very similar shape to this one above it. And also, over the course of 4 minutes, Loom has found that these are connected to each other. So 4 minutes can be a lifetime in terms of your systems and the data and the logs that they're creating. Loom doesn't need things to happen at the exact same time to find their connection. In fact, you can see here that it's showing you why these are correlated, because you can see it shares a common data center or a common location here as well. These are the connecting points that Loom has found because it has the logs and because it has words and in granular detail to match. It's pulling these together into one incident so that you see a full picture of what's happening. And then over here we describe it. It says it seems like a bad configuration has been loaded, causing user transactions to fail. Here's the configuration manual for the HA proxy, and it's the correct way to resolve the problem. There's so much more to this. I'd love to go into more detail. I think we should stop here just as a quick overview, and Noah, I'd love to talk to anybody else in more detail that would be interested.
Yeah, this is perfect. So thank you so much for doing this for us.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, I'll stop.